Okie doke. Right, Trenton, do you think we should go ahead? Yep. Okay, perfect. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our first community event of the year. This is dealing with negative behaviour. So Trent is an expert in the topic. He is the author of Human Powered and is today going to walk us through a very interactive session on how to deal with negative behaviour and also look inwards at ourselves and our sort of negative behaviours as well, which I'm very intrigued about this part of the session and see how we all score. So I won't take up any more time of this session and I will hand across over to Trenton.
Great, thank you very much. So, I don't want to go to work tomorrow. I'm losing all my confidence. I can't sleep well at night. So being on the receiving end of negative behavior can be really, really awful. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Well, I can't see any of you. Well, nice to see your names. And I'm Trenton. I'll do a proper intro of myself in a few minutes. But yeah, this is a session about dealing with negative behavior. So we're going to look at what the different examples of negative behavior are. We're going to look at how to deal with negative behavior. And finally, we're going to look at how to stop yourself being the perpetrator. And it's quite an interactive session. So we're going to be in breakout rooms quite a bit, and we're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff together. So it's not just me talking. But I'm quickly going to define what negative behavior is before we kind of get on with our first activity. So this is the really important bit. So you're obviously doing something else at the moment, right? You're obviously side messaging or like doing another bit of work, and that's fine. Do that as much as you like. But this is the really important bit. So please listen just for 10 seconds. So negative behavior is any kind of behavior that reduces someone else's growth or well-being. It's really important. So I'll say it one more time. Negative behavior is any kind of behavior that reduces someone's growth or well-being. So it sounds quite strong, but there's lots of different intensities of negative behavior. Sometimes it is strong, but most of the time it's very mild. Okay, so what I want to do is ask you a yes or no question. And for this to work, I'm going to need you to do a couple things. First of all, go to gallery view. So top right of the screen where it says view, make sure you click gallery. And I'm actually going to need you to turn your videos on for what we're about to do next, because it won't work if we can't see each other. So if you're comfortable turning your video on, please do so. And in the top right of the screen, go to gallery. And that way you won't just see me, but you'll see all of us same size. So top right of the screen where it says gallery. And please turn your video on because what we're about to do won't work if your video's off. Oh, there's real people behind the name. So nice to see you all. If your name is Fearless, do you mind changing it to your real name? Then we all know what to call you. So I've got a yes/no question for you. And I'm going to ask you this question. So, and if the answer is no, just do nothing. And if the answer is yes, wave your hands in the air like you just don't care. Hence why we need videos on. So, my yes/no question for you is either at work or at home, at any time in the last few weeks, have you been on the receiving end of negative behavior? Has someone else's behavior or communications had a negative impact on you? Any time in the last few weeks? If the answer is yes, just wave your hands. Woo, yeah, I've been on the receiving end of negative behavior. What a strange thing to get excited about. Okay, lots of hand waving, which is great actually, because, well, it's not great, obviously, being on the receiving end of negative behavior. But yeah, almost all of us have been on the receiving end of negative behavior. It happens all the time. You probably have today even. It happens all of the time. Very occasionally, people are negative and toxic to almost everyone, but that's very unusual. Very, very unusual. It usually just happens in certain instances, and the person doing it very rarely wants to. People almost always have the best of intentions. They don't mean to have a negative impact on you. Okay, so we're going to go into breakout rooms in just a couple of minutes. And I want you to start thinking about the different types of negative behavior. And in just a moment, I'm going to copy and paste the instructions into chat. So whenever we go into breakout rooms, I'll always put the instructions in chat before, so you know what you're doing. But just before we do, I'm actually going to share my screen and explain to you what you're going to be doing. So in just a moment, you're going to go into breakout rooms. And when you go in breakout rooms, not now, but in a minute, you'll see at the top of the screen a breakout room number. Not now, because you're not in breakout rooms just yet. But in a minute, you will. And let's say you're in room number 3. Well, you go to slide number 3. And if you're in room number 5, oh, what should I do if I'm in room number 5? I know, I'll go to slide number 5. It's really that simple. And there'll be 2 of you together in the room. And as a pair, what I'd like you to do is to rank these negative behaviors from the strongest negative behaviors, the one that have the biggest impact, through to the least strong. So let's have a look at these. Ooh, being defensive. I hate that one. I'm going to put that at the top. That's the worst one. Ooh, justifying your opinions. Yeah, that's not too bad. I'll put that kind of towards the bottom, and so on. So you'll be in pairs in just a minute. And as a pair, go to the correct slide and just rank those in order of the most severe through to the least severe. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. When you go in your breakout room, like I said, look for your breakout room number at the top. You'll also see a countdown timer. Keep an eye on the time because you'll get kicked out of your breakout room at the end of the time. So I put the instructions in chat. There's a button at the bottom called chat that, given we've been working at home for 2 years, you're probably quite familiar with. Open up chat, click on the link so you've got that file open. Now, just in case any of you can't get that file open or working, there's a few links at the bottom to kind of screen grabs. You don't need to open those if the file's working fine. I'll give you just a minute to read those instructions and get that all ready. Okay, hopefully that's all good with you. We'll go in our rooms now and we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, great. So we'll go through some of your answers in just a minute, but I'm aware I haven't introduced myself. So let me quickly just tell you who I am, this random guy down the end of the Zoom call. So yeah, my name is Trenton, and I'm the founder and head coach of a business called Team Sturker. So I basically spend my days running people skills programs, generally for digital product teams within brands and also for agencies. It's all about giving people skills in emotional intelligence and people skills. So I'm a qualified leadership coach. I'm a former Samaritan, and I've been training teams for more than 15 years. I also wrote a book, actually. So my book came out last year. Oh, there it is, right next to me, as if by magic. And yeah, it became a bestseller, actually, which is quite exciting. And it's all about the kind of people skills and EQ that you need to succeed in the modern working world. So that's very exciting. And I know a lot about design as well, I mean, in particular product design. So I started an agency called Web Credible back in 2003. So yes, I am that old. Zoom is very kind to my wrinkles in my face. But yeah, it's one of the first kind of UX and product design agencies in the UK, and I ran that for about 15 years until a few years ago when I exited. We became part of a much bigger group and I left. So that's a bit of background about me. Today is a session, as you know, about dealing with negative behavior. If you've got questions at any point, I would encourage you to post them into chat if that's okay. So rather than kind of interrupt the session, if you can put them in chat, and then I will answer those questions, likely when you're in a breakout session. Oh, Owen Hughes. Hello, Owen. You're at Invika, aren't you? Yes, we kind of work together for a living. Oh, hello. Sorry, I just saw your name and your face, and nice to see you. We'll finish at about 2 o'clock. But if you've got any questions at the end, you want to talk to me, I will hang around. So happy to chat to you afterwards. Okay, great. So let's go through a few of your answers. And the way I want to hear from a few groups, we don't need to hear from all of the groups, and I want to make this fair. So, oh look, I have a random number generator. So we only have 4 groups. It's quite a small cohort today. So just 4 groups. So if your room number happens to come up in my random number generator, it would be amazing if one of you could unmute yourself and talk us through your decision making. So are you ready? So you've got a 1 in 4 chance of being chosen right now. I don't like those odds if I was you, especially if you're in room number 4. So that was Chi and Katrin. So if one of you out of Chi and Katrin is happy to unmute yourself, and can I ask everyone else to go to slide number 4? So remember, that's number 4 that we're on. And for Chi and Katrin, if one of you is happy to talk through what you've done, obviously you don't need to read aloud the cards, but instead, if you can just talk through your decision making and why you rank them in this order, please.
Do you want to talk, Katrin? Okay. No, we started off like trying to find which was the worst, and then we decided to put the most pleasant one first, and that's how we ended up with this list. But towards the end of it, we had some thoughts that maybe the indirect reactions are worse than the direct reactions. So we haven't really settled on this. And but anyway, the list for making other people wrong, we had blaming other people for things that you think you've gone wrong was the worst, because it feels like not taking responsibility for your own actions, and that can be quite instinctive, and that's really bad, not only in terms of the action, but in terms of your own development. And belittling people's opinions is also a bit like criticism. So and sorry, it's also like a bit like being rude and sarcastic. So we were not sure whether these two, there were any difference. And then the least ones are at least if we just disengage and not have any opinion, maybe it's not so bad. And lastly, criticizing others is not so bad to us because it's at least like being honest and openly speaking up about what you feel.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Chi, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really fantastic. Now, negative behavior, by the way, is quite subjective. And what I'm interested to hear for the order that room number 4 have done and the description that Chi just described, how do you feel about that ranking? How much do you agree with Katrin and Chi? So there should be a poll that's popped up. Just be honest, because it is just subjective. I'm assuming Katrin and Chi, your vote for strongly agree. But for the rest of you, well, how do you feel about that ranking? What would you do for the ranking? I'll just give you a few more seconds to get your vote in. So there should be a poll that's in front of you, offering you the chance to vote. Democracy, freedom, guys. So do get your vote in. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and I'll share the results with you. And generally, you guys kind of agree with room number 4. Could come out anyway. Yeah, Chi, I love your enthusiasm. Whoop, whoop. Fantastic. So yeah, generally everyone's in agreement. Doesn't matter, by the way, if you agree or disagree. It's just subjective, really. Okay, that's fantastic. What we're going to do now is hear from another group, because there are actually 3 categories within these slides. Every 4th slide is the same one, or sorry, every 3rd slide. So let's hear from a room who did a different category, so not making other people wrong. Oh, room 1, but you did the same one, so I'm afraid we're going to skip you for a minute. Oh, room number 2, let's hear from you. So that's Jodie, Laura, and Louise. So please, can you all go to slide number 2? And Jodie, Laura, and Louise, if one of you is happy to unmute yourself, I mean, don't fight each other to like unmute yourself and be the spokesperson. But if one of you is comfortable unmuting yourself and sharing, that would be great. So that's room number 2, guys. Slide number 2.
I can take this one.
Thanks, Laura.
No problem. So making yourself correct. So I'll start with the one at the bottom. So justifying your opinions with facts and strong statements. That was sort of a first port of call. So again, we worked on what we thought was kind of the best thing and then went from there. That one really just stood out as the best thing there, the best thing that you can do in terms of making yourself correct. After that, the other 4, not going to lie, we had a bit of a kind of, they all just kind of felt equally a bit rubbish. So trying to actually distinguish between those 4, they were sort of somewhat on an even playing field. But I just think talking profusely so people give up, it's annoying, but it's maybe not as horrible as kind of the other 3. So that was a thought process behind that. And then I think we went for the kind of the worst top 2. So telling people you were right all along and playing the one up as just sort of immature, childlike, pretty much. And it just felt kind of those 2 were sort of probably the worst things that you could do.
Okay, brilliant. Again, Laura, thank you so much for sharing. And same as before, how strongly do you agree or disagree with that ranking? It's all very subjective. There's no right or wrong here. So please just vote honestly. Okay, just give you a few more seconds to vote. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so here there's about just over half of you, 57% are generally agreeing, not strongly, but agreeing. And then what's that? Just under 50%, just under half of you kind of, yeah, probably do it a little bit differently. And that's great, actually. Great for me, because I'm trying to highlight a point here. So it's like a live demonstration. What could possibly go wrong when you do a live demo? But in this instance, it's kind of going, well, woohoo, because what we're seeing is that you kind of feel differently about different negative behaviors. And that's good, because that's the point I'm trying to make here. Okay, so let's go back to our random number generator. To be honest, because it's such a small group, there's only really one group I want to hear from now who've got the other category that we haven't done. That's gaining power. So should we see who it is? Oh, will you look at that? It's room number 3. So room number 3 is Jenny and Owen. And again, if you can all go to slide number 3. And if Jenny and Owen, you're happy to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think we've done the wrong one. So I had a technical difficulty actually getting into the call. So I came in and didn't hear any of the instructions. So we've actually done number 5.
Oh, okay. Oh, you did making yourself correct.
Yeah.
Oh, so no one's done gaining power. Wow. Okay. That's a first. I've never had this happen. Okay. Well, let's take a look at that. What do we think? Okay. Well, I'll ask you all to do then. Have a look at that. And you can obviously copy it from the slide. Can you just copy and paste what you think the worst one is? And let's just see what everyone's worst negative behavior in slide number 3 is. Just post it into chat, please. And we'll see if we come up with many differences. So which one is the worst? If you had to choose one of those in slide number 3, just copy and paste the worst one. Copy the worst one and then just paste it into the group chat here. Thanks, Katrin, for kicking us off. Give a few more seconds to get yours into chat. So what do you think the worst one is in this list? Okay, great. Quite a bit of consistency there, eh? A lot of you are saying they are reacting in an angry manner. A small bit of differences, again, because negative behavior is very subjective. So, for example, Owen, you might be on the receiving end of someone's negative behavior. And you might come out of a meeting with Katrin, say, oh, God, Katrin, that was awful. And Katrin, you might say, oh, it's awful. It wasn't that bad. Because, again, it can be quite subjective. And that's important to remember, by the way, in particular for what we're going to do the rest of the session. Okay, so what we're going to do now is look at how you respond to negative behavior. So now we've got an idea of the different types of negative behavior. What can you do about it? What can you do about it if you're on the receiving end? And it's hard. Don't get me wrong, it can be really difficult. We're going to kind of come up with a bit of a framework together of your different options for responding. To be honest, if you are on the receiving end of negative behavior, you actually have 3 choices. There are 3 possible things you can do. Do you know what they are? Number 1, you can just choose not to acknowledge it. You can choose to do nothing, and that is a valid response, by the way. Number 2 is you can call out the behavior. You can call out the other person on it, but do it later. And number 3 is you can call out the behavior in the moment, right there and then, stop the conversation and say, this is not okay. So we're going to go back in our breakout rooms, and I want you to discuss why might you choose each of those 3 options. What would the situation need to be where you're going to choose one of those 3 options? So I'll put those instructions into chat again. So I'll give you a moment just to read those and get familiar with them. We're not using the slide deck that we were just using. So you can close down the slide deck now. We're not using that as part of this exercise. So it's just a discussion. What would happen to make you choose each of those 3 options? And when we come back together, we'll hear from a couple of groups with our random number generator. Okay, so you've got your instructions in chat. Hopefully that will make sense. And we'll see, you'll be in the same rooms, and I'll see you back here in a few minutes. Okay, great. Well, so it'll be great to hear from 1 or 2 groups. So as always, let's go back to our trusty random number generator. So 1 in 4 chance once again. That's not good odds. There's a good chance you're going to get chosen. Nervous. Oh, it's room number 3. So that's Jenny, Noemi, and Owen. I'm so sorry. I'm sure I pronounced your name horribly. Apologies. But if one of you from room number 3 is happy to unmute yourself, and please share with the group what the circumstances need to be in place to choose each of these 3 options.
I'll go. So
thanks, Owen.
I think I would say it depends very much on the person and the setting you're talking to. So like if you're talking to a very good friend, you could call out the behavior in the moment. You'd be like, I'll stop being so negative, like, and kind of do that. Or with family or colleagues even, you could do that as long as it's like a gentle way, like stop being such a negative Nelly or something like that. So with, say, calling out later on, I would say like you could do it with a client. So you formulate a plan. If it's a particularly relationship that you need to kind of tread around or be constructive about, then you would kind of formulate later and talk about it, and then maybe go back with a response.
Yeah. Why would you not do it in the moment, Owen?
I would say it depends on the client. I think if they're particularly tricky, for lack of a better term, it may just worsen or heighten emotions in that particular scenario, potentially. Okay. I'm thinking back to an example I had last year. where he probably would have done that.
What made you in that situation? What made you choose to acknowledge the behavior and say something?
It was like I think it was just getting the wider team down. To be honest, it was affecting.
Guys.
It was affecting.
So it's kind of ongoing. It's kind of happening.
Yeah, it was like a slow build up, and then it got to the point where like the team were like, okay, we need to actually do something about this now.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it was something that was happening, and it was bringing the team down over time. Yeah. So like a regular thing. Yeah. Whereas if it's a one-off, like what you were kind of stuff you were saying earlier. I mean, if it's a one-off, you kind of maybe don't want to. You could like choose not to acknowledge the behavior as a one-off, because you don't always need to kind of pull someone out for what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. What else did your group talk about?
I think that's it. Jenny, did you have anything to add?
It also depends on the situation. When you're in a group meeting, it's pretty hard to call it in the moment, so it's pretty better to call it later.
Definitely.
In one-on-one sessions. And I also have the example, this behavior is my favorite, responding because when I'm in the situation, I don't recognize it yet. So when time is giving, then I see, okay, something went wrong, and then I call it out later, because in the time
to think about it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a great one. Great answer. Okay, great. Well done, guys. Thank you so much for that. Let's hear from one more group. Oh, room number 4. So that's Chi and Katrin. Hey, Chi, I love your enthusiasm. Katrin, I kind of feel like it's your turn to share this.
Yeah. There are not much chances that someone else would have been picked, right? We talked about not so much about the situations, but about the culture that we are in. Like Chiwa told that in Asia it's not that common to speak up, so you often find yourself in the ignoring part, in the ignoring behavior. And also if you talk to your peers, then it's kind of easy to talk back or clear the situation in the moment. But if you talk to your boss or your manager, then it's very difficult to speak up right at the moment.
So there's a hierarchy type thing in there. And in that case, and as I kind of said this in the instructions, like it may not be you who calls out the behavior. So if it's someone more senior, you might ask someone of equal level to do this on your behalf. Unless it's your own boss, in which, is that what you're talking about? Like if it's your own boss and what you need to say to them. Okay. Anything else you guys talked about?
Did we? Would you like to add something?
I think I was thinking about it from my own personal experience, and because I'm quite slow, so I wouldn't even know what is happening when it's happening to me. And so there's no way I'll be able to call out the behavior in the moment. And if I do that, I think I'll probably end up like having an argument with a peer. And I wouldn't be so methodical as like, oh, what you're doing is like affecting my emotions. I'd be like, what's your problem? Let's settle this.
Yeah. So in terms of calling out the behavior in the moment, this is kind of like you're alluding to in some ways. It's not something I generally recommend doing, because emotions can get high and the other person can get defensive, especially if there's lots of people around. So if it is happening regularly and there's lots of people there, then do call it out, but call it out later. The only times you'll want to call it out in the moment is if it's really bad. Do you remember there's different severities of negative behavior, right? So if it's really mild, let it go. If it's mild and it's a one-off, it's fine. Just let it go that time. If it does start happening regularly, like you were talking about, Owen, and it's getting the team down on a long-term basis, then you do want to talk to them. And then like you're saying, Jenny, if there's lots of people there, you shouldn't do it there and then. You do it later. But if it is... sorry, Chi?
If someone responds to like say, if someone responds by saying like, oh, don't shout at me, is that calling out behavior in the moment?
Yes, it would be saying, yeah, the way you're talking to me right now, it's not working for me. I feel like you're shouting. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'll be calling out. I'm going to talk about that in just one moment, about like kind of very quickly talk about how you might respond. There's a couple of other reasons you might want to call it out in the moment. So if you want to stand up for a team member, you might want to do it in the moment, especially if it's really bad or personal and it's happening to someone else. And if you're more senior than them, you might want to say something there and then. Look, I've got to stop you, Chi. Let's just say, Chi, you're the one being angry and shouting. Chi, I've got to stop you. The way you're talking to Katrin, that I can't allow that to happen. What you're saying is okay. It's just the way you're saying it, Chi. We're going to need to rephrase this and talk about this differently. So you may want to do that if you're their boss and you want to stand up for them. The final one that you would want to do it in the moment is just if you're not able to talk to them later. So talking to them later is always the default. You don't want to call out in the moment. It's like the nuclear option, especially if there's lots of people around. Now, there's a couple more reasons why you won't want to acknowledge it. So like I said, if it's just like a one-off, and when you're talking about like if it's just a friend of yours and they're doing it, oh, come on, mate, sort it out. I'm guessing if you're friends with someone, they're not going to be regularly exhibiting negative behavior to you. I mean, you'd hope not as a friend. So, if a friend does do something, yeah, if it's a one-off, you may want to say something to a friend, but you may just want to let it go because it's not going to happen again because it is just a one-off. But there are two other reasons why you may choose not to acknowledge the behavior. And this is kind of in line with what you were saying, Jenny, about, you don't, and Chi, you were saying as well, you don't always know at the time what's going on. So it may just be you're being triggered. Remember I talked about how negative behavior can be quite subjective. You might feel like someone's exhibiting behavior to you. So Chi and Katrin, you might be in a room with me, and Chi, you might be getting really frustrated by what I'm doing. Whereas Katrin, you might be like, oh, that's fine. And there are 4 different communication styles. I do a whole bunch of training around different communication styles. And if my communication style is the opposite to yours, Chi, there's a very good chance you're going to feel like I'm exhibiting negative behavior to you most of the time. Whereas if Katrin, if your communication style is the same as mine, you'll get me and you'll get the way I communicate and you won't find it upsetting or offensive. So it's always good to kind of get peer feedback after a meeting if you think it happened. So you can kind of work out, was this negative behavior or was I just being triggered? The other thing that might be happening, you might be triggering them. And you might be saying and doing things through no intentions of your own that are upsetting, annoying, and frustrating them. In which case, you need to talk to them in a different kind of way. And again, it comes down to people's different communication styles. I'm afraid I haven't got time to kind of go into the different comm styles today, because this is a whole other topic that I do training on. But by the way, not acknowledging the behavior, choosing not to acknowledge the behavior, it's very different to just not having the confidence to say anything or do anything. Because one of them, you're owning the situation, and the other one, you're being a victim of it. And obviously, it's far more empowering to own the situation. So what I really urge you to do when respond is to use something called the please process, which is cue shameless plug for my book, because it's written all about it in my book. And again, it's a massive topic that I'm not going to have time to go into the detail today. But generally speaking, P is that you're going to explain the problem. So I might say, Jenny, I just want to stop for a second. That the way you're speaking right now, it's just not really working for me. Or the way that I want to have a chat with you, Jenny, about what happened earlier. I understand the things you were saying. You were saying A, B, and C. And the kind of way that you were kind of shouting and raising your voice, it just made me feel uncomfortable. And then you move into L and E, which is you listen and explore. So I hear all from you, Jenny, about where you're coming from. And then and A is I articulate my point of view. And then we collaboratively solve the problem. That's S. So in short, when you raise this as an issue, tell them the issue very short, very succinct, not making the other person wrong, and then just let them talk. Let them just kind of get off their chest what was going on and let them kind of work through that to then hopefully be like, okay, I get it. The things I was saying to you was okay, but yeah, I shouldn't have used that shouty voice or whatever it might be. Often people work this out if you give them space. Whereas if you go and go, don't shout at me, you're just going to get their back up and it's not going to work. And for those of you if you're quite assertive and you do like to call out behavior a lot, negative behavior when it happens, what I really urge you to do is what it says here, is focus on the war, not just winning each battle. So if you use your own negative behavior to respond to someone else's negative behavior, well, 2 wrongs don't make a right, as our parents always told us. Don't fight fire with fire. It's not a very good way of doing it. And then if other people see your negative behavior, they get like scared of you and it can affect your relationship with other people. So be the change that you want to see in the world. Don't fight fire with fire. You don't need to win every battle. Just focus on the long term and making sure that they treat you with respect. Okay, what we're going to do now, the kind of final exercise for today, is we're going to spend a bit of time, or you're going to spend a bit of time actually, I say we, but it's you really, thinking about your own negative behavior. What, me? No, it's always other people. So everybody exhibits negative behavior, and I'm talking to you. You exhibit negative behavior. Yes, you do. So do I, by the way. And remember, it's any kind of behavior that reduces someone else's growth or well-being. You do and say things unintentionally almost all the time that will negatively impact other people. You don't mean to do it, but you do. And the people who do it to you almost always don't mean to do it. And you'll struggle to create really like solid relationships with people if you don't curb your own negative behavior or other people's perceptions of what your negative behavior might be. I'm going to give you a little bit of an example. I'll give you an example. I'll talk to you about my negative behavior that I need to be aware of and I need to kind of keep under control. So a lot of my kind of negative behavior, if left unchecked, kind of falls under that gaining power category that well, actually no one looked at in the exercise we did first. But there was one of the categories that was gaining power. And a lot of those I can exhibit. So if I left unchecked, I'm late for everyone's meeting. Right? If someone else sets up a meeting, my natural behavior is just to be late. And it's a power thing, right? That's why, by the way, that's why people are late for your meetings. The people who are regularly late. Yeah, sometimes people are unfortunately late. But the people who are regularly late, it is a power thing because it makes all of you wait. And I do that. So I have to work. This might sound weird to you if you're generally on time. Why don't you just always be on time? But I have to work hard to be on time to meetings because my default behavior is not to be on time. Isn't that weird? Anyway, we're all weird, right? We're all messed up. So that's one thing I do. Another thing I do, I often interrupt people to change the topic in the middle of a conversation. I think very logically. My mind moves quite quickly. So I find myself kind of moving ahead of the conversation a bit. And I just, oh God, this is boring. Let's move on. And that has a negative impact on the people I'm with. And then sometimes I often feel quite passionately once I kind of work things out in my head. I'm like, yeah, this is it. Come on, we've got to do this. And I get quite strong with my opinions. And again, that has a negative impact on other people. It's not okay to do that. So those are my negative behaviors, and I'm aware of them, and I have to work hard to make sure that I kind of curb those. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back in our rooms, and we're going to have a confidential discussion. So when you come back, there'll be no random number generated, no group sharing. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So what happens in your breakout room will stay in your breakout room. And I'd just like you to have if you're comfortable, have an open conversation with your partner. What negative behavior do you think that you display? Either intentionally or usually it's unintentionally. And what triggers it? And what do you think the impact might be on other people? So I'll put those instructions into chat, give you just a few seconds to read that, and then we'll go into breakout rooms. Okay, so we'll go into breakout rooms now. Like I said, just to reiterate, there will be no group sharing afterwards. So please feel free to talk as openly as you're comfortable with, and rest assured you will not have to share anything with the group when we get back. So did you know that if you tell yourself you want to achieve a goal, you want to do something, you're only 10% likely to complete it if you only think about it. Whereas if you then go and tell someone else and make a commitment to someone that you're going to do it, that increases to 65%. Whoa. Clearly, the latter is a better option. So when it comes to negative behavior, we all exhibit it. It's just normal. So what I really urge you to do, if you're up for it, is what you just spoke about, share that with a few people that you trust. And people that you work with, that you've got psychological safety with, talk to them about this and say, this is what I think I do. What do you think? And can you hold me to account on this? Can you help me out with this? And once you start verbalizing it and talking about it with people, it's really amazing what starts happening. And then what I really urge you to do is this. See it, say it, stop it. That's right, folks. Just like for those who live in London, what they tell you on the London Underground. See it, say it, sort it. But I'm saying see it, say it, stop it. So if you are in a conversation with someone or in a situation and you find yourself exhibiting the negative behavior that you don't really want to, you'll start noticing it. See it just kind of happens now. You'll start seeing it. And the hardest part is say it. And this is where you stop the conversation. You say, you know what, I'm really sorry. I've been interrupting you the past few minutes and it's something I'm trying to stop doing. So please keep talking. And I really don't want to interrupt you again. So sorry. And then there comes the easiest part, because what's quite astonishing is once you say it, you just automatically stop it. You won't do it again in that conversation. I can tell you that now. So I really urge you to try that. Give that a go. It's really, really powerful, and it creates amazing kind of connection with the other person, creates real psychological safety because you're showing a bit of vulnerability, wanting to develop, and that will really cement your relationship. It's a really great thing to do. Okay, guys, that's more or less it for today. A whistle-stop tour of negative behavior. If you do have any other questions, then please do just hang around. Happy to chat to you for a few minutes. I hope you've learned something new today. Look, remember, everybody, that's me and it's you, everybody exhibits negative behavior, but very few people are brave enough to do something about it. And I hope you will.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Trenton. I hope you all enjoyed it, guys. Obviously, like Trenton said, if anyone's got any quick questions, please do pop them in the chat. Obviously, connect with him on LinkedIn. And yeah, we hope you got lots out of today's session. And be sure to check out the Fearless website for our next event coming up. And hopefully you'll join us for that one as well. But if not, have a wonderful day, everybody. And we'll see you for the next one.